It's here, folks. SEC Media Days for Auburn has occurred. We're going to talk about it. Hugh Freeze, Kam Stutts, Elijah McAllister, Luke Deal, all of it, everything in between. Let's get into it. My opinions, your calls right now. War Eagle Auburn family, War Eagle E2C Network family, thank you so much for joining us. Whether you're watching live, whether you're watching on the replay, whether you're watching on Facebook, home base of YouTube, however you got here, we appreciate you hanging out with us, spending some time being a part of our little family within the Auburn family. Today's topic live stream has addressed at the very top of the show, SEC Media Days for Auburn reaction. Just initial comments, questions if you got them, thoughts about what has occurred thus far for Auburn coming out of SEC Media Days. We'll mainly be discussing Hugh Freeze's press conference and minor things that we've been able to glean from some of the interviews and commentary coming from the players and other topics around Auburn on this particular live stream. I'm going to offer my opinions. Would love to hear some of yours. If you want to call in, I know it is still the middle of the workday when we're recording this, so some of you may not be able to take part in the actual call in, but we'll leave it open for those of you that would like to. At the top of the chat right now, it is available for those that would like to take advantage of it, and it's always brought to you by our friends at allthingsauburn.net. Check them out if you haven't. So we can talk about anything that you want to talk about in this. This is just a reaction show, initial thoughts, questions, commentary. I will say this. My biggest takeaway from SEC Media Days, and I don't want to sit here and act like this isn't typically the case coming out of SEC Media Days, the opening press conference, but I at least want to say that for me, I felt like Hugh Freeze portrayed a lot today of optimism about the team, cautious optimism, which is what I've been preaching and hoping that some of you will adopt this season. That requires a little bit of patience. But what I think you will find if you go back and watch his press conference is a surprising air of optimism about what they can do. He talked a lot about has Auburn bridged the talent gap that was clearly there at the end of last season. The team got better, but has the talent gap closed? We won't know that until we get out onto the field, but it's definitely a great question to ask. So those are my kind of initial impressions about that. I would love to hear some of yours out there. Matt, thank you for checking in. And as Matt has done already, would love to know if you're here watching live, especially, you can participate in this in the replay. We'd love to know if you're here. Post where you're watching from, your city, state, international with a War Eagle, or however you'd like to do that. We'd love to know where people are calling from because it's cool just to see the far reaches with which the show gets to. You'd be surprised how far it reaches. So do that if you can. And of course, smash the like button if you feel like we have earned that. So really what I can do from this point is go through a full list of notes that I have from the press conference and things that I have already kind of, I always have a buzzword every live stream, glean from what's going out there on social media. I want to say this about one of our players that I hope is becoming more and more apparent. So if you aren't aware, 3 representatives with Hugh Freeze, Elijah McAllister, edge rusher, transfer from Vanderbilt, hasn't played a down yet. Some people were confused why he would be the representative or one of the representatives for Auburn. Tight end Luke Deal, and then offensive lineman Kam Stutts, or I think he just goes by Cam. But want to talk about Elijah. There's already a clip that's been released by the Auburn football team. If you have not gone and watched that clip, we've shared it on our Twitter. You need to stay here first, but you need to go watch that. I am telling you, it will light a fire under you. He is our type of guy. I love me some Elijah McAllister. I personally, in the E2C network, has been trying to make people aware of this. I think today is his coming to the forefront. Let's be honest. No offense, Vanderbilt fans. You don't typically put people out there in the forefront for football. Elijah McAllister is using his final year on one of the more, I will call it, prominent programs historically, not currently, but prominent historically programs. And when you give him that with the fan base behind him and his innate talent, charisma, got a special guy on our team. I'm just going to say that right now. From all that I can tell, have yet to meet the dude. So go watch that clip. Talks a lot about, and you can hear a lot of being an Auburn man in that. So I have a full list, like I said, that we can just walk through of things that were discussed in the press conference. And I think most of you would be interested in those things. Let me hit some of the big topics, though, at the start. And I know as people come to the chat, we'll probably get some of these questions, so we might have to rehash some of these things. Right off at the top, most of you have probably heard by now that Jarquez Hunter situation was asked about at this, and Hugh Freeze didn't even hardly let the question get finished before clearing the air, and I shouldn't say clearing the air, expressed that he will not be able to comment on that particular situation because it's an ongoing, I don't know if the word investigation was being used, but it is something that is not under his purview to comment on right now, even though he is a player on his team. So I know that doesn't give a lot of reprieve. I know that doesn't give a lot of hopefulness. And I know that doesn't give a lot of answers for the Auburn fans out there, because I know a lot of you are fretting about that. I wish you wouldn't, because I don't think there's reason to fret until there is a reason to one. But basically, we're not going to know anything until we know something. I know that's redundant, but that's basically where we are sitting at right now. Devin checking in. War Eagle, I have not had a chance to watch the interviews yet, but I have it recorded. I will watch it and call in and discuss during family night tomorrow. Big update on that, Devin. I said this on a previous live stream. We're not doing family night tomorrow. So if you can get away to call in now's a great time just to talk with me about it. I will be off tomorrow night. Unfortunately, we'll talk about that at the end of the show, but you gave me a great segue into that. So Jarquez Hunter, nothing was addressed there. The quarterback battle is still wide open on that front. And I'm trying to think if there was one other big topic that we probably needed to address. I'll come back to it in a little bit. We got our first caller on the line, so let's go ahead and say hello to him. I had a feeling I was going to hear from my good friend, Mr. Michael Floyd, on the line here at E2C Network Live. What's going on, sir?
Can you hear me really good?
Hear you loud and clear. I'm assuming
Okay.
in Alabama.
Yes, Bruton, Alabama. We're still here. About another 2 weeks until we go back, but we're still here.
Good to hear from you, buddy. What is on your mind today?
I was just extremely excited after Coach Freeze took the podium today, and I feel really good about. Um, I'm not gonna say this season, but I feel really good about the future of our program and just the way he carried himself. He was up there talking, and I was just jotting down what he was saying, what he was addressing, and some things that stood out to me were that he no one even asked him about his past, which I was kind of surprised about. But he knocked on it about answering another question, and he answered it as best as he could have. And I was really grateful and just happy that he was able to do that. Coach Freeze is a very openly honest man, and he doesn't hide anything back. And the second thing that stood out to me was he kept on saying how the alignment at Auburn now is probably the best it has ever been. And
Yeah.
you look at that, I really didn't follow along during the Tuberville years, and then Chiswick was a little bit earlier before I was able to start following a little more deep. Obviously, of course, but when we won the championship in 2010, I was in fourth grade, so I was just watching
Now you're making me
football.
feel old, Michael. Goodness gracious.
When we won in 2010, I was in I was in fourth grade, so I really didn't follow it in depth as I did once I got on in high school. And then, of course, the Malzahn years, 2013, I was in seventh grade when we made that run. And then where we are today, after the Harsin era now here. But just the alignment is there from top down. I think we even talked about this on last week on here. I really thought that he said it again and he mentioned it. It shows you how far Auburn has come and how willing Auburn is to get this football program back on track to win SEC and national championships.
I can always count on you to help me where my mind goes away. But before we brought you on, I was talking about the three main topics that I would take away from this press conference. The third one would be alignment. So this is a word that is becoming much more prevalent, not just amongst what we heard today, but a lot of the Auburn personalities. We shared a quote from the recent podcast with Talking Tigers podcast with Andy Burcham, where he was talking to John Cohen and Butch Thompson, and they talked about alignment. He acknowledged himself in a quote about how it feels like there's more alignment being seen by people, and it's very much appreciated. That's not a shocker. So that's a really good sign for Auburn. I like how you walked past all of the previous coaches there. I would say, yes, there was, for a lot of the time, not a lot of alignment with Coach Tuberville, but there was a lot of fan support from him. Chizik, that's kind of a unique situation because it was such a quick rise and fall, so you can kind of understand the discontent there. Gus, I won't get into that because I'm a big Gus fan, and the people don't want me to go off of that tonight. And then the Harsin situation, that's just a beast unto itself as well. But I would say the alignment has been an issue, and he brought that up in the press conference today. And we're just at the start of this thing. So let's reevaluate what the alignment looks like 2-3 years down the line, if we reach that point, assuming we will. But I love that you brought that point out. That's a big sticking point for me, and I love to hear about that. What else you got on your mind, Michael? Might have lost him. Michael, if you can hear me, call back in, and we'll let you come back on and discuss it. But I think we have lost your connection.
Can you hear me now?
There you go. There he is.
I was looking at my SEC Media Day notes, and I guess it must have muted me or something.
That's okay. I figured something like that happened. I was trying to stretch it out as long as I could for you.
Right.
You get back in there, you made it. So your response.
And, that alignment thing, as you say, it's just becoming a great deal. And even, on the latter half of last year's basketball season, even Bruce Pearl even mentioned that word alignment. And, it just kept, and now it's becoming a normal word and I think the reason we're putting it out there so much is because Auburn has just been vilified by ESPN, CBS, Sports Illustrated, Yahoo, any sports
into it.
Yeah. Any sports network that's probably not affiliated with Auburn, they have just drug Auburn through the cold mud and just talked about its boosters, and it's the fans and the boosters. And I'm like, okay, first of all, can we just move on? All that happened with the boosters, that happened or did not happen, it's over. Auburn made the choices that it has made, and now we're all ready to move in the right direction. And I honestly believe that the ship is headed in one direction now, and that's good for not just fans, but it's good for the coaches, their staff, and these student athletes. And those are the people that really deserve, the alignment.
Yeah, it really feels like a fresh start. And you always get one of those when you bring in a new coach. But, sometimes those fresh starts aren't so fresh. For instance, Gus, when he came back, it was essentially 75% of his team that he helped recruit when he was a offensive coordinator for Gene Chizik. So that in and of itself was almost like a continuation, and you saw some of the benefits of that. Now you've had 2 regime changes in 2 to 3 years, and what has happened is you've basically just said, we found ground zero. So they're really the only way to go is up, to come together at the bottom and work our way back up. But at least we're here. We could still be, and there's always going to be fans, as you talked about, that always just want to bring up this and that and just can't move on from things. But it does feel like that we are feeling that. But like today during his press conference, they're openly expressing that, using that word a lot now. Well, that's a big, big takeaway for me too. So I'm glad that stuck out to you. What else stuck out to you today?
Something that also stood out to me was that, these past years, and I guess specifically during the Gus Malzahn years, we went through all those coordinators, and just play calling was between Gus and his coordinators, or the coordinator and Coach Malzahn. Well, today Coach Freeze got out in front of it before the season even starts and said, "Look, Coach Montgomery, he's going to be the play caller. but I might have the right, but I have the right to change something if I see fit.
Yeah.
And I think that was good to go ahead and get out in front of that. Obviously, the quarterback battle situation. I mean, something that stood out to me what he said about Peyton Thorne was that Peyton Thorne came to his office and said, "Hey, can I have a picture? I guess of everybody on the offensive side of the ball."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Okay, that sounds like a leader. That sounds like somebody who wants to come here, be a leader, and really fit into this program and in this in the culture that they're instilling." That really stood out to me. And something else that stood out to me, not even Coach Freeze said it, but one of the analysts said it. Chris Doring said it before Coach Freeze got up on the podium and spoke, and he said, how come this headline isn't being talked about a lot? Coach Hugh Freeze is back in the SEC, and of all places, he's at Auburn, the other half of the Iron Bowl. When
Right.
Auburn is hot, I mean, Auburn is making noise. I mean, if you look at the SEC history and the national championship history, Auburn has been there in the last decade or so.
Mm-hmm.
Now we've had some up and down years, but Auburn has been a contender right there for SEC and national championships in years past, and that really stood out to me that he just took some time to indulge in that fact. And then Greg McElroy had this just ludicrous take this year. This morning, I just can't believe what he said this morning about
Well,
how,
he's a Bammer,
like,
so
exactly,
yeah.
when he said we should just be great, we should just hope for a bowl game. I'm like, so you think we're going to struggle to get the 6 wins? I don't know why on God's green earth he would say something like that, but I realized, he got his tail whipped by Auburn, so he's still a little bitter back in the day. Um, but all in all, I think everything that needed to be addressed was addressed. Obviously, he couldn't comment on the running back situation. I think all of Auburn is eager to see what's next with that, how major, how minor it might be. But all in all, I think Coach Freeze did a great job. And going back to last December, I think A.D. Cohen did a great job of hiring Freeze. Despite who was number one or number two or number three on the list, I think Coach Freeze is a great fit. And Paul Feinbaum
Yeah, he never coached a
says
day in his life.
exactly. Paul Feinbaum has said, Auburn hired Freeze at the right time, and he's the right fit for us.
Yeah, you hit a lot of different topics there. I love that you brought up the thing about Peyton Thorne. To me, what that shows is character. He has every reason to walk in to Auburn and assume he's going to be the starter because he's got the experience at a Power 5 conference. Yes, no, Robbie Ashford has more SEC experience from him, but he had that experience with very little help last year, as we all saw.
Right.
So you could make the case very easily. You should walk in and feel like you're the starter. But this is a guy that understands even if I believe that, I've got to show that I'm going to earn that. Doing little things like asking for that list of people to know on the offensive side. That's someone who's taking initiative, ownership. And what that does is it shows that if there's any animosity that ever arises during these competitions, that this guy, at least if I'm mad at him, it can't be because he just walked in and assumed he was going to get it and got it anyway. He's actually showing up, doing the work, and that's a great thing to hear. So that was, I was recalling some of the things that in my feverish note taking during the thing, what I might have missed, and I forgot about that portion of it. So that was a good reminder. So if you had to wrap up your thoughts on the press conference, things that you're getting and gathering from social media and the fallout from it, what would be your kind of final closing thoughts on that?
Oh, my final closing thoughts would be obviously Auburn's not going to win a national championship this year.
Right.
But if we do, I don't see they'll hit the end of us if we win a big one this year. But it's fun. It's exciting to have the excitement back within Auburn football and within the Auburn football program. And I think going forward that we're going to be just fine. You often hear Rome wasn't built in a day. So it might not be this year, it might not be next year, but maybe that third year we'll see a true team that can compete for SEC and national championships. And we're also a team that is no stranger to miracles. And this season could be a season filled with miracles. You do have to go to A&M, you do have to go to LSU, but you get Georgia and Alabama at home. So Looking forward to this season. Talking season is here. That's all we're doing right now is talking.
Yep.
I am eager to see where the preseason poll places us at the end of the media days on Thursday. I'm eager to see how low or how high they have us. But a lot of the experts saying that I heard today was that yes, Auburn might not go to the SEC championship. They're going to go to the national championship, but don't count out this team. They still can make some noise, and this team can still make noise this season.
The old saying is, if they go low, we go high.
That's
So
right.
we could apply that here. Also, the reverse kind of happens too, but we won't talk about that.
Right.
So, Michael, it's always great to hear from you, buddy, and continue to pop in here whenever you can. We appreciate your thoughts.
Yes, sir. War Eagle.
War Eagle, Michael. All right. Phone lines are open still. If you have some thoughts, questions, anything that you want to hit, please do call in. Again, we know we're doing this at a weird time today. I'm going to just tell you this as a personal note. This has been one of the craziest weeks I've had in quite some time in the lead up to this. So it has just been, there's been a lot going on top of this. Let me just say, Devin says, not going to lie, I kind of agreed with McElroy. I know fans are excited and that's good, but I wouldn't be surprised if we go 6-6. I remain cautiously optimistic. I said this, I think, when Sunday evening on the Auburn Experience live recording. This is a season that is not going to, I feel like, is going to be a pendulum swing, meaning it's going to go really good or not bad, but really the other way. So I don't know really what to think at this point. It's why I'm kind of sitting at my, mile marker of 8-4 and then making decisions from there. But yes, I like that Michael brought up that McElroy can be a little ridiculous sometimes, but I would say about that commentary today on the SEC Network, he knows what plays to the audience in getting reactions, even if it's a negative reaction. Devin also says there's a lot of hype around Auburn right now, kind of like last year. I do think the energy is a little bit different, though. Yeah, there was a bit of an anxiousness around the unknown. This is more so what if anxiousness, like a good what if. What happens if this gets right? What happens if this hits? What's that happen? That's kind of what's happening. And that's the feeling I got today from Hugh Freeze in his press conference. Now, that's his job. He's a seller of the program. So don't, think that I'm sitting here being naive. Well, Kyle, he's got to do that anyway. He gets up there on a stage, but he's been pretty candid in some commentary that's maybe not nationally covered, but it could be nationally covered if they wanted to. We're interested in it, where he said, hey man, miles to go before we sleep, basically. So I liked what I heard today out of him. James also agrees the energy around Auburn is extremely different. And how could it not be after a dismal 2 years? Very little to be excited about there. All right, keep your commentary coming. Questions. Let me just point out that a few notes that I took away from the press conference and things like that. Excuse me. So Greg Sankey introduced him, and Hugh brought up their relationship several times, whether he was asked or not, and talked about how much he values Greg Sankey's ability to speak into him. When I say that, I mean, I'm sure they've been very open about some discussions of his past expectations before he got to Auburn and after. And it seems like if there's any opposing fan, especially out there, that wants to make a case that, some shady deal went down, or this is just real shady that they were bringing him in. Well, your SEC commissioner is clearly giving him the vote of confidence and has a much deeper relationship with him and I say that in a good way than you're aware of. So that was good to hear. Let's see here. Note taking. Talking about alignment, that was one of the first topics that he brought up, talking about not just AD, not just this so-and-so and all of that, but across the board alignment. Yeah, I loved Elijah McAllister's Thanos reference. Was incredible. That was good stuff. I am a big big Elijah McAllister fan. Like, I usually have a man crush on people at least once a year on the football team. It's probably going to be Elijah McAllister. I'll just openly say that. Man crush city. I was excited about this dude from day one. So again, when you're done watching here, if you haven't, go watch his clip. I think Auburn Football actually shared it out, talking about his perspective on what he hopes to get out of Auburn and in life and what he's trying to accomplish and stuff like that. It'll really give you a perspective into him. I agree. I didn't know anything about the Boise boys last year, but Philip Montgomery had an extremely good offense at Baylor, so I feel different. Let me be a little bit contrarian, not to Unbeaten Lake, but just in general to that concept, because I think it's fair to play both sides of this. Just remember, there was all this hype around them too. So all this may be for naught. In show. We can only operate and do our talking season off of what we know, and what we know is very little, but what we see, what we hear, what we can gather and kind of dissect, it all seems to be really good right now, which is what you want. What you don't want to hear is they arrived on campus and everybody started leaving and blah, da, 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 da. You know, none of that seems to be going on. I shouldn't say minor. One issue, the running back issue, whether Jarquez will be here or not, is out there. But other than that, it's been pretty clean so far entrance into the Hugh Freeze era. He spent some time during his press conference talking about how much he's appreciated the response by the fans, record-setting season tickets, and was very complimentary of his three guys, Kam, Luke, and Elijah, who are representing Auburn today, but continues to express a need for patience, even with all that optimism that I gathered from him today. Now, I haven't watched some of his individual interviews, so when I go find some time to watch that today, it'll be interesting to see if that correlates, if that tracks with what else he's saying out there. But that would be something definitely to take away. People seem to have a serious memory hole around the hype from last year. Everyone was praising Harsin and how he won media days last year. Oh yeah, I remember that. I think I said that, but yes, I remember us having these same conversations last year. He won, how everybody was praising the clip that they make fun of now. It didn't work. Everybody was like, I'm fired up that he took a shot at the boosters. So it's funny how quickly fortunes can change. Today's hero is tomorrow's villain sometimes. So just remember that when we're sitting here X amount of months and years, and if we're talking about a change yet again. Hopefully not. I don't know that this program can withstand another change in the next 5 years and still be any semblance of relevancy out there. All right, you guys keep giving your comments and questions. We'll address them as they come up. Those that we haven't hit and that are appropriate. I found a funny note. Apparently the running joke this year is that Bob Holt gets asked the first question. How important do you have to be to get the first question with every single coach? For those of you that watch some of the other interviews and stuff, that's apparently been the trend, that I can vouch for, like the Texas A&M, the LSU one. I watched that one yesterday. I think even the Greg Sankey one, he got the first question. That's pretty hilarious. I liked Hugh Freeze's openness, about what his expectations were in terms of getting back to the SEC after what happened at Ole Miss. He's very honest and said he didn't think he would get back here. Didn't really have any high hopes for that. But when they started having success at Liberty, that seemed to give him a little bit more hope for the future, and rightfully so. The biggest piece was not the success for him, was winning back people's trust and faith. That is what he brought up today too. Somewhere down in my notes somewhere was the idea of restoring faith. Now, obviously those of you that love to make the brother Hugh Freeze jokes, which mostly are in good taste, know how prominent his faith and belief in Jesus is in his life. And I concur with him on that and really applaud him for that. But when he's talking about that, it's even more so than that. It's just restoring faith in the program, restoring faith in him, restoring faith in the entity that is Auburn and what we preach and what we say that we are in this family entity, restoring faith in the concept of Auburn being Auburn. Because if that football team is not, everything else seems to take a hit. And it's a sad reality sometimes, but I can attest to that as a content creator. If that football team is not having some semblance of success, everything else gets affected. The town, the fan base, all that. Really liked that too. I was able to watch a few minutes and I liked what he had to say. You're talking about the faith portion. Is that what you're discussing? Sometimes I see your comments a little bit after, so it's hard to keep that all together there. Let's see. What else? Oh, who's going to call the plays? Michael brought this up when he called. And it is nice to hear a head coach with the potential for having this weird OC or whatever. If he's a defensive guy, him and the DC, an offensive guy, him and the OC dynamic, and the awkward dance that's going to happen there. You know, juxtapose that with Texas A&M, where that was about as muddy as you can get. But that's Jimbo for you. He comes out and openly says that, and I think he's already said this before, Philip Montgomery is the play caller, point blank. And as you would expect, he's the head coach. He wants to have some input in on it, and he should. You know, that was one of the funniest things about the whole Gus Malzahn thing. And people would say, Gus, get out of the way. And then they were like, Gus, why aren't you doing more and letting your OC do too much? And it just, you never can please some people. But what I loved was his recognition, self-evaluation. Says, I was a good play caller. And he accepts that title several years ago. And he's been evolving over time at his time during Liberty too, and understanding that he's coming back. It's great to have him back in the SEC, but he's coming back into a world where he is known. A lot of stuff is known about him. Play calls are known, schemes, signals, and he needs to be able to adapt and to change to something that this league is not as familiar with. Now, will it look exactly like Philip Montgomery did at Tulsa and Baylor? Probably a little bit, but probably not so much. So it'll be fun to watch how you marry the two ideas. Hugh Freeze's way of doing things and Phillips, and you'll probably see more of Phillips because from what it sounds like. So addressing that, getting out in front of that, I think, unfortunately, that's where Jimbo suffers a little bit in this, because he doesn't create a lot of faith and or consistency in their messaging when you leave the door open for interpretation on who's calling the plays. The head coach, especially if it's your side of the ball that you coached as an OC or a DC, always should have input, but you got to know where the buck stops before that. The buck stops with Hugh Freeze, but it's got to even get through Phillip before anything else. When he was talking about how he thought he would come back to the SEC and leave Ole Miss. That's what you were addressing earlier. Good. All right, I'll keep working through some of the notes here. Let's see. I thought it was great. He said he was optimistic about the quarterback battle, and he feels that he is more than most in an optimism fashion and way he views it. I like that he even brought up Hank Brown. Look, no one's sitting here, and Hank Brown's, if he were to see this, I don't think he would disagree with me on this, that he's got the biggest mountain to climb in terms of the scholarship quarterbacks. We all know that it's a Peyton Thorne and Robbie Ashford race, and Holden Geriner is kind of sitting there and could do something to launch himself into that race realistically. But Hank's not really in that conversation. But even on SEC media days, Hugh Freeze acknowledges that it's wide open, that he's feeling optimistic about it, and that everyone's at play. He did say Hank Brown is a freshman. And when you hear that type of terminology, you're hearing him acknowledge probably not going to get you the guy this year, but he better prepare like he's the guy. So hearing that He's more optimistic about that because some of my interpretation of what he said about the quarterback race in spring, leading up to spring, was not so much pessimistic, but it was just like, we got a long way to go. And I like that he is optimistic about it. Unbeaten Lake, we were talking about OCs. I wouldn't have a lot of faith in Petrino either. Well, Bobby Petrino's rise and fall has been a little bit different. Not to say that he hasn't had a change of life and heart and all that stuff that came with his fall. I think Hugh's been a little bit more open and vocal about it. The difference is once you saw Petrino fall, you never saw the success really rise back to the top. So it's kind of even harder to make sure that you buy into him and have faith in him when there's not the on the field stuff to back it up. Hugh's been backing that up. Will it continue here at Auburn? That is the $1 million question. He picked probably the hardest stage to restore faith in what he can do on the field at this level. He would like to be, and this is my interpretation of what he said, he feels like he will be able to be judged off of the 24, 25, and 26 classes when he gets on campus. I think that's fair. I always am a proponent of you need to give coaches at the barest minimum 3 years. And I said that about Harsin too. And I also think that there was an argument to be had for that with Harsin. Not a strong argument, but you could have at least made that argument given the stability Auburn needed at the time. But we chose to go a different route, and I'm thankful for that right now. 24, 25, and 26 recruiting classes. That's 3 years from, really 4 years from now, meaning the 26 gets on the field. I think we'll get an idea once the 25 gets on the field. We'll have a good idea of the trajectory of this program. 26, we will know what this is going to look like because that'll be the year 4. So I think that's fair for him to ask that. Called out On to Victory being a big factor for keeping guys on campus. So if you are able to, if it's something that you're willing or wanting to do to support that, be sure to check out On to Victory because it is making a difference. Oh, this was a cool little note. Brian Body, especially with the commentary around Jarquez Hunter, it's good to hear. He was very honest and said that when they were recruiting him, kind of viewed him as not a between the tackles guy, probably not an every down back, or used a lot on special teams and in other formats. But he got there and just found ways to squeeze through holes and create opportunities for himself between the tackles. And so if you're worried about the Jarquez Hunter situation, folks, that is a reason to stop fretting so much. Cody on Facebook, I'm excited for football season. I see us at 10-2. I love the optimism. I'm not there yet. But I love the optimism. So Brian Body getting praise. He talked about Caleb Burton, a few other not really names, but just talking about the crop of wide receivers that's here that he sees a value to this team, and even noted that they haven't even really got a full look at what these guys as a collective group can be together because they were missing 2 key wide receivers during spring camp. He said about the flip the script mentality at Auburn is about changing the mindset for the fans, for the programs, but on the team too. And he says, this was his quote, "You have to rewire the way we think." I think that's pretty fair with what's going on right now. He was asked about NIL and how he sees it affecting college football, and vicariously his team. You've heard him commentate on this before about his biggest concern is how it infects the room, meaning the locker room, the team meeting room. And there's a lot of talk about go get your opportunities, but be aware of what's going on around you. Be aware of what you're getting, what someone else is not getting. It's a hard thing to balance and work through, but it seems like he's very aware of that. Funny bit. I was not aware of this because shockingly, I was not following Ole Miss a whole lot during his time there. But apparently he is a little bit superstitious when it comes to second half adjustments. And according to him, I think it was Matt Luke, he said, who eventually became the head coach at Ole Miss, his offensive line coach. He made him change his outfit, I guess, or was it the shirt or the whole outfit, and said that Will Thornton may have that coming or insinuated that. Clint Richardson, that's something for you to watch, my friend. We've already talked about the talent gap. And of course, any head coach that's here gets asked about Alabama and Georgia. And when people say, Brian Harsin came in and said, I'm aware of how important this is. And even though I've not been here, I can appreciate it. This is a guy that understands, because not only has he been in the SEC, but Ole Miss isn't that far from Tuscaloosa. He knows he is very familiar with how important rivalries are, how important this thing is. And I believe his mother is an Alabama fan, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a weird thing there too. He was also asked about the hazing situation at Northwestern. This is interesting. Listen, I'm not going to say that's not worth talking about or anything like that, but I always feel like at these press conferences, there's someone that's trying to stir up something just to stir up something. I just didn't get that one, but was asked about his opinions on the hazing thing that was allegedly happening at Northwestern. And what I loved his response to what was a controversial question was about selflessness and making sure what our program is about caring for others and caring for each other. And that really speaks for itself, because if you're caring for each other, if you're caring for one another, you're going to really think about what you do and what the impact of what's going to happen. Look, I was in a football locker room. Would I say that we went through hazing? No. Would I say that we went through some rites of passage in, just fun, lighthearted stuff, not inappropriate in any way? Yes. So there is room for some of that, but what is the consequences of that? And I like how he addressed that today. The other coaches were asked about the hazing too. Very weird. That's I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't assume that there's a reason behind that, but I just always find it interesting. Zach says that woman was out to attack his character. I'm not going to accuse her of that, because if she asked that same question to all the coaches and maintains that through SEC Media Days, then at least she's consistent and being fair. But sometimes not, and I'm not saying her or anyone specific, there are stories that they want to write and they've got to ask this information so they have something to write about. But Michael brought it up earlier that there really wasn't anything brought up or asked about directly about his past. And Hugh didn't even really say anything about his past. But what he did say was, when I hear people critique Hugh and talk about, you got lucky, you shouldn't even be here, and just, there are some people I'm very disappointed with in how they've chosen to express their concern with Hugh Freeze as a hire. These are people that don't understand the concept of forgiveness and consequences. There are consequences for our action, but there is also forgiveness. And it's hard to give something that you've never really received too. I'll say that as well. So I love that he's transparent. I love that he doesn't shy away from owning up to things that, whether it's directly or indirectly, but talking about introspective self. So I think if Hugh continues that rhetoric, and I mean that in a good way, that'll serve him well. A continual reminder to himself publicly and to others, I am aware of how I need to be better and should have been better in the past. Neil checking in. Good to see you, buddy. I have low expectations for Auburn this season. I think it'll be 2 to 3 years before AU competes in the West. Just my 2 cents. I don't think it's unfair to say that this takes time. I don't know how long you've been here, Neil, but we were talking about Hugh saying today, I've got optimism, talking about the quarterback battle mainly, but just in general, I got a sense of more optimism from him, but still asking for patience. This problem doesn't get fixed on day one. Even if Auburn reaches into that magical hat and says, we're doing it again, 2013 all over again, that doesn't mean that it's going to maintain. Foundations have to be reset. For those of you that are builders and things like that, you'll know that sometimes the problem has to be rooted out at the cause. And like Devin's saying here, she's kind of feeling that with you. I think where we get wrong, I think there's two sides of this coin, right? You can be too far oblivious. I love it though. I would rather you be on this side of things, optimism, and too pessimistic. I think understanding where Auburn is, which Hugh does, and he expresses today during the press conference, and then working from that and work off what you see, change your opinion based off what you see, is a fair place to be. And see, that's the great, you've got a great perspective on that. He's taking the steps that he needs to show that we're heading in the right direction. But yeah, very happy about that. Fixing the O-line, I know that's a big thing. And speaking of changing perceptions, changing concept and ideas, changing our mindset, all those type of topics, people are concerned about offensive line recruiting still, and I understand that. And I forget who to attribute this to, but I do think that it's going to be fixed on the field with this offensive line recruiting. We are going to have to show people that we can have success offensively and at the offensive line with who we have, who we're able to get before the big dogs, so to speak, come in. That's true. If you don't, you'll be like this the entire time. Devin, I have to admit, I did not want Hugh Freeze, but I kept an open mind and was willing to listen and what he had to say. And I also did my research in the situations that I had issues with. And I love that. I think a lot of people didn't do their research. A lot of people went off what they were told. And you could easily find that out if you'd ever get anybody to talk to you about it. I talked to a few people who had very controversial opinions on Hugh Freeze, and I quickly understood that they didn't know the facts, and when presented with the facts, would ignore it because they had decided what the narrative was without actually knowing the person. High Fly, just checking in. Wasn't able to watch. How did it go? Terrible. Season's going to be awful. It's over. I'm doing this again next year. No. We are sitting here, at least me personally, with an optimistic outlook, mainly because that's what I received from Hugh Freeze today. And I like what I hear from some of these guys. I'm really excited to go listen to like Luke Deal and Kam. Got to hear a clip from Elijah earlier. So all's good right now. All's good. Auburn should build a rolling coaster so fans can get a firsthand. You don't need to. We experience it. Lots of ups and downs. So the opposing fans, that's what it should be. Instead of the band coming out, we drop down from the sky a roller coaster ride. So now, opposing fans, you may experience what the Auburn family is experiencing, not just today, but every day. Zach Guess, O-line definitely got to improve. That's unfortunately going to make or break Coach Hugh Freeze. Well, that's any coach right now at Auburn. 2024 class O-line going to be relying on transfers again, unfortunately. I am someone who typically does not like to go heavy into the transfer portal. However, you had to in this case. And I don't think I agree with the Nessa. I know you didn't mean it this way, but the unfortunately part of that, I think all perception should be that he brought in some quality guys. And here's the great thing. We're starting from such a low point with offensive line. How are you really going to know the difference? Almost out of water there. So, yeah. Neil's now workshopping his ideas for this roller coaster ride. Love it. Love it. All right. We're sitting at about 50 minutes here. Would love to hear some of your commentary, questions that you have about, especially if you weren't able to watch in our final few minutes here. Let me give you some reminders about here at E2C Network. First of all, the biggest reminder I can give you is if you know our schedule, typically we do a Wednesday night show, 8 p.m. Not happening tomorrow. Canceled. I will not be here. Got one last bit of vacation I'm able to enjoy, and I'm going to take it. So I am sorry to those of you that look forward to that every week, live or on the replay, but we will not have that this year. We will be back Wednesday. Sorry, that was confusing. Sunday, with a special guest on the Auburn Experience podcast. So join us at 9 p.m. Eastern time. We'll set that up a little bit later in the week for you to get ready to watch. Check out all the links in the description. If you are not subscribed, you are going to miss out, first of all, on that giveaway, 4,000 subscribers. We're almost there, and that's when we're going to do this thing. Also, we are about to have tons of content for you guys, and we need you to help us continue to grow this family within the Auburn family. If you want to take the next step, links in the description, ways to follow us, support us. You can be a channel member here on YouTube for $1 a month if you want to take the next step and start at $1 a month there too. The Booster Club, get yourself some extra perks. Those are all the things that you can do to help keep the lights on here at Auburn too, at ETC Network Central. Zach Guest says 2025 will be the beginning of Coach Freeze and his full squad. So let's do that math real quick. 2024 class will be 2024 season. So that's the second year. I would say you can't really say that until the 2026 season. You could start to do that in 2025, but I think 2026 is really where you'll know truly if he gets that far. Scotty asked the big question. My question is, what are Auburn fans' expectation? It's the only question that people are going to be wanting to know from here on out. We will be doing a prediction show of some fashion with you guys, and I will do my own prediction video too. You're going to find ranging top ideas from undefeated to ain't going to win a game again. But it seems like I would say if you took a poll of everybody that was willing to give it, it'd probably fall in the 7-5 rank right now. Neil says, I liked how Coach Freeze talked about running his offense. A lot of coaches won't talk about it. I think it's fine to be closed off, keep it close to the vest. But I also think Hugh recognizes that the more transparency he can give, not that he has to give it, but that he can give, builds trust, changes that mindset that Auburn fans have about the relationship between coach and fans and all that kind of stuff. So it may not seem like that impacts much, but what Neil brings up here is a good concept that builds trust and faith when you can share small tidbits like that. You know, I love Gus to death, but Gus was one of the most close to the vest people ever. And I think there's some validity to that. But this is a guy that comes in with a lot of baggage and understands, here I am, hat in hand, as much as I can be, I'm out in the open on offense, everything. You got to appreciate that. Yeah, Neil, I knew that was going to get you a Gus comment. I'm not even going to entertain that. All right. So as we kind of wind down, continue to get if you want to take advantage of the phone line, I can take one last call. We'll close it in a second if you'd like to call in. But with that in mind, big things to take away from SEC Media Days. Alignment, the biggest thing. Not just him saying it, not just other people, but this is becoming a narrative that's being expressed and preached by all parties, it seems like, even outside of Auburn. And that's a good sign. And that's a scary thing for everybody else in SEC and college football, because when Auburn gets out of its own way, this is the reason why I started an 8-4 record every year, regardless, pretty much, and work up or down. because Auburn has the talent, typically has the facilities, has the backing, has the support, has the alignment. Well, I shouldn't say not normally, but has what it needs to be successful on a high level, no matter who's there. And when they get out of their own way, oh, buddy, it's a dangerous thing for people. Jarquez Hunter, no information on that. We won't know anything. Hugh Freeze cannot comment on that, and you would have to understand why. For those of you that are frustrated about that, I don't know what to tell you. Get over it. You will not know anything about him until you know something about him. So speculate away, but there's not going to be anything solid that comes out. And I would be very leery of anything that you hear, read on message boards and things about that. Alignment, him, quarterback situation, wide open, but good things to hear about Peyton Thorne jumping in and not just expecting to be the starting quarterback, but earning it as well. I think those would be the three biggest, and optimism too from him. When do you think was the last time Auburn had true alignment? I don't know how it was with Gus. It was pretty close at times with Gus, but even then, we got some people that like to hate on Gus because he typically makes them feel bad about themselves because he's such a good guy. Sorry, it's the truth. So with that in mind, to answer your question, I would say the very early year. So go back and watch Pat Dye's introductory press conference. Now, when I say this, please don't sensationalize this and say he's the second coming of Pat Dye, but I'm saying there's some eerily similar discussions. Pat Dye said, and I believe, and I'm butchering the quote, and I believe with the support of the Auburn people, the alumni, the administration, the student body, the faculty, so and so on, we can make this Auburn program back to what it once was. That was saying alignment without it. So to answer your question, probably the early days of Pat Dye, which would be a good reason to feel good about this because it goes back to, other than the coach that's here, what it took to get Auburn together was somebody saying, it's time to get out of our own way. It's time for me to get out of my own way. So take that for what you will. Thank y'all so much for being here, for hanging out with me. I am sad I won't be able to be with you guys tomorrow, Wednesday night, to hang out with you, but I am excited for what else we're going to gather from this week of SEC Media Days, what we'll be taking from it after that. I would imagine we'll learn about the practice schedule very soon. Lots of content still to come from here at E2C Network. So join us now, subscribe now, and I hope to see you here often and as much as I can at E2C Network, where we share the whole Auburn experience. And until I talk to you again, War Eagle.